Originally, I was on that side, but since then, I cut my finger. I'm gonna give it a good hand.
Puerto Rican kid, bald head, loves snakes, loves Blizzy, Sergio Chacon.
Yeah. What up, Pa?
Peace. Welcome to the DBS podcast. It's your boy Sergio Chacon, aka Blizzy Chacon. That shit whack. I mean, it's always gonna be Dirtbag Shit podcast. The DBS podcast. Peace and welcome to the DBS podcast, aka the Chacon Show. It's your boy Sergio Chacon, along with my baby girl Curry Wrinkles. This week's guest, Lower East Side photographer Clayton Patterson.
My man Clayton, what's going on, brother? I want to show you this photo. Remember this? We took that in like 1992. And I like your idea of reenacting that. So obviously it's not the same dog. Yeah. And my friend, he's much heavier now.
Okay, so am I.
He still got all his hair though.
That's right. So, boy, I'm probably taking 10,000 pictures in front of this door.
10,000 pictures.
And then when you add the groups together, because some of them are groups, 1,000.
Every time I walked by here, it was so exciting. There was this glass window right here, and you had your picture there. We paid $1 or something like that.
$2 if you
$2.
wanted a picture. But so we had the Hall of Fame, which was the pictures in the window. You remember the pictures? Mm-hmm. And this was the Wall of Fame. And so what VR did was he gathered all of these different tags from all over the Lower East Side, or some people are hung with Cruz from Lower East Side, and put them up in the door. TR here, he was from 3rd Street. Seek, of course, VR, Dast was over there, Semi, we got Bugs, Bridge was there,
Yeah,
you had White Kid, and the most ups in the whole neighborhood, Send 4. Well, this is the only graffiti history like this in history.
Yeah.
Another kid called Claw that had a little hand. And his tag was Claw.
Yo,
Yeah.
maybe that should be my nickname because of my little finger. Claw.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Claw,
So
2021, we doing it again.
that's right. So it's an amazing history of Lower East Side. And the good thing was, even though there's some bunch of bad guys, it was all positive. Everybody loved it. That's what I'm asking.
Peace and welcome to the DBS podcast, aka the Chacon Show. This week I am joined by photographer Clayton Patterson. How are you, my man?
I'm good. So you say peace. I was going to say slice, pepperoni, whatever. It's good.
That's very New York of you, and you're originally from Canada, but New York is your home. I look at you like a native New Yorker, even though you're originally from Canada.
Yeah, except I live in the Lower East Side, and that's an immigrant neighborhood, so I fit right in. And so I've been there since '79, so I'm a Lower East Sider New Yorker.
Wow, that's when I was born, man. So you've seen it all. You've seen all the changes.
Yeah, the gentrification, I've documented a lot of it.
Yeah.
By film and video, the photographs. Yeah,
So
I've covered
you
it for
did a
years.
film. What's the name of the film that you did?
Well, I did Captured. I did a book called Captured, Film Video History of the Lower East Side, and there's also Captured the movie. And if you look up Dan Levin, Ben Solomon, Captured, you can watch it for free on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever it's on, but it's free. And it's 70 minutes. It's a feature. It's very well done, edited by Jenner First. And you get to see the old Lower East Side. When they say rock and roll, it's a different kind of rock and roll than you're thinking of, including rock and roll.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, I've seen the book before. I have yet to see the documentary Capture. What would you say was the sentiment of the film? Was it more like punk rock? Was it gentrification, or a little bit of everything?
I'd say a little bit of everything. I would say it's some memories. You know, you got some bands like the Bad Brains. You got the Homeless in Tompkins Square Park. You got the Tompkins Square Park police riot. You've got the front door photographs. The front door starts off with 3B, Juice, and Mike. And they're old Lower East Siders. And I photographed them, in front of the door. And I photographed them for years. And now, so when I look back at the front door pictures, I have multi-generations. And so I photographed some people when they were very young, like yourself. Mm-hmm. What year did I photograph you the first time?
I'm going to say you photographed me a few times, and around mid-'90s or so.
Mid-'90s, yes. And then up until now. And in both times, you kind of reenacted the shot.
Correct.
You had a pit bull then, you had a pit bull now.
Right.
And so we
A pit bull always stays close to me. Love those dogs.
Love those dogs. That's right. Actually, in the 80s especially, pit bulls were big on the Lower East Side.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially Puerto Ricans, had the pit bull.
And unfortunately, a lot of those guys used to put them to fight. Not all, but it was a thing in the late 80s or early 90s. I remember kids that I knew. I always owned pits, and some of my friends would call it throwing them. And I'm like, why would you do that to that emotional, beautiful animal, that cares for you? But it was a way of life for some people to make money and entertainment.
Well, it was that, but also, and you bring up a good point. I mean, the pit bull, if you treat them right, you bring them up, they're really a friendly, loving dog.
Absolutely.
Very protective, but definitely loving and total companion.
Yeah, and you don't get that anymore, too much anymore. You don't see kids walking around, putting their dogs to fight. I think the people raised awareness, and people are just a little bit better about how they treat their pets now.
There's still a few pit bulls around. There's a guy, Eldridge, over there by Allen. He's got one. He walks it every day and goes around like that, but that's a friendly one. Yours.
But you know what I'm saying? That culture of like putting dogs to fight is no longer not at least from what I've seen in the immediate area.
I hope you're right.
Me too.
I mean, there used to be cockfights too, and I don't hear about them much anymore either.
Right, and it's the thing about cockfights is I grew up when I used to visit my father in Florida. It would be a week out the summer. I would visit him, and he used to take me to cockfights. So I had a strong connection to that sort of brutality because I was hanging out with my pops, and I enjoyed it, but I was just a kid. I didn't know any better. Now, if I watched that, I would be a little bit sad about it. It's interesting how that's like it's a way of life, a culture, a part of people's culture.
Well, when I was a kid, I ran away from home between grade 9 and grade 10, and so I was working at a farm this one time, and they used to go to church. They were Mormons, so I had to go to church.
You were Mormon?
No. But I lived in a Mormon community.
Understood.
And it was a good community. So after temple, you'd come home, go out, get a chicken, wring its head off, take them in, clean them, cook them, eat them. And the more further away you are from rural life and real life, the more difficult sort of certain things become. Like now, after years of seeing a chicken in a package, it's different than watching a chicken being killed and then taking it and eating it. So part of it is, like you say, cultural. If you're familiar with it and it's part of your culture, then it's a natural thing. And we get so kind of removed living in the city that we're disconnected from a certain kind of reality. Chicken comes in a package, the farm, it comes from the yard, and you take it and you pull its head off and you eat it. So
that is correct. And I remember vividly, after the cocks will fight, they would use them for food. So it was like part of the entertainment. They would cut the loose's head off, and that's what you would eat that night. So it wasn't like they just disposed of them and they threw them away. They would eat them.
Well, that's good, because also Santeria is the same thing, and it became a big sort of debate. I documented a lot of Babalao Canizares. He used to make a leguas, and anyway, he was a Babalao. But a lot of times for chickens, because, they do a chicken during a sacrifice, but if they killed it in something bigger, especially like a goat or something, then you would always clean it and cook it and eat it and like that. Sometimes with the chickens, not as much. And so that became kind of a legal debate. Well, if you're using the chicken for a religious ritual and you're eating the chicken, what's the difference? So, these things sort of get all kinds of PC politics involved. But I'll ask you a chicken story.
Okay.
Under the Williamsburg Bridge.
I remember that chicken. What was that? That was it wasn't a chicken coop, because the chicken coop is small. This is like a factory, not a factory. They sold live poultry.
Yes.
And my babysitter used to take me to that poultry, and they used to grab a chicken and throw them in a boiling pot that was huge. I mean, they had rabbits, they had goats, and you could smell that.
That's right, 2 blocks away.
2 blocks away. And I loved going there as a kid.
Well, it was interesting. Right under the Williamsburg Bridge, there was actually live. I'm not sure if they ever had goats there or not. I think maybe on certain occasions they did.
Yeah, I may be getting that mixed up with another place in Queens that I've been to. So there's one under the Williamsburg Bridge. I believe they just had chickens, and it definitely had rabbits. I saw
And
rabbits.
They definitely had rabbits. That's correct. And sometimes, I don't know if there's enough Greeks to have a holiday, they bring a goat or something. Because some of the bodegas actually used to also sell goat and things. They don't anymore.
No,
all that culture's gone. You know, the bodega culture used to be able to buy, Dominican rum, a little package of 5 cigarettes. Don't smoke anymore, thank God. The cigars, you remember the Dominican cigars?
Yes,
used to be able to buy
absolutely.
all that kind of stuff. And
now we gotta appease the new wave of people, so everything has to be. You gotta get organic tomatoes, and you'll be lucky if you could get a Malta.
You'd be lucky if you get a Malta. That's right. That's
high
right.
fructose, lots of sugar in the Malta, Puerto Rican drink.
Yeah, that's right. Cafe con leche, 9 sugars.
Yeah.
Not for me, but a lot of people like that really sweet cafe con leche.
Is that your phone?
It is.
Speaking of pit bulls,
We'll let those dogs bark. Who let the dogs in? Boom, boom. So, you grew up in Lower East Side.
But yeah, born and raised. And you had mentioned the Tompkins Square Park riots. I remember as a kid walking through the park, and it was tent city. It's city is being a little much because it was just a park, but it was filled with tents, lots of homeless people, and there was like a pathway you could walk through. And that what year was that?
This was the 3rd term of Koch. What had happened with Koch? After Koch, they learned that 3-term mayors is no good. So they had 2 votes, and both times they voted no 3rd-term mayor. Bloomberg comes in. He changes the laws, spends $300 million.
He bought that shit.
He bought that shit. And he made a lot of really terrible, terrible changes. But
no more straws. What was it, straws?
Yeah.
Oh, no more soft drinks above 40 ounces or something like that.
Yeah, and the straws, all kinds of... But you see, I'll get back to the tent city thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things, I asked this, the simplest way to ask this question is to talk about black people, right? So, what is the way that most black people, on average, get out of poverty?
I'm not sure. I mean, most people get. Would it be incorrect to say like sports or
Sports is one.
Entertainment.
I
don't know, some sort
Art,
of
music, and sports.
Yeah, music and sports.
Right. So, starting with Giuliani, but getting to.
And that sounds so bad. I said that out loud. I'm like, is that correct? I mean,
but it is correct.
It is correct.
And I use the term black people because it's easy to think of black people in entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like, or sports. So there's too much money in sports, so they keep the sports. But myself, for example, being a good-looking white guy, I got out because. But
I say, hold that thought. Across the board is just, I guess it's also formal education falls into that bracket. Yeah.
Well, you get to formal education a lot of times by a specialty you get in school. My secondary education came from taking art. I took art in high school, and it changed my life. I came from the bad end of the working class, and a good chance I could have gone in the wrong direction if it hadn't been for art. I mean, now you're into boxing, so boxing and sports is good for you. Mm-hmm. But for the average, art and music take you out. So why would a guy like Bloomberg get rid of the art and music? I mean, you start thinking about it. And then you mentioned the business, like with the bodegas. Now it's all going to be organic and that. They don't know that business organic. So you take away the small businesses, which we got. We got bars instead of businesses. There used to be a lot of local business. They're all gone. Sports shops, they're all gone. And so they bring in bars because bars pay more rent, more money. So what it was a way to burn out the rest of the neighborhood. Because if you live in a tenement, for example, the bars get out at 4 a.m. They have 12 liquor licenses on Ludlow Street. So it is crazy at night, 4 a.m. So people can't sleep. So that gets rid of a lot of people.
Hey, Marshall.
I got to come in.
This is Clayton Patterson.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Nice to meet you.
Marshall's a fan.
To see his hand. There's a whole guy there. There you go.
Marshall's in the house.
Marshall's in the house.
Excellent. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries, please.
Pleasure.
I feel good.
I hear a lot about you, man.
Well, I hope it's all good.
He's given us a nice slice of some New York City, specifically Lower East Side history.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So that was thank you. That was really important, was the art and the music. That's what got me to New York. So Bloomberg got rid of the art and the music. So that's not a way out of the inner city now. And sports, you can still get into sports because there's too much big money in sports. And a lot of the sports come from the inner city anyway. Basketball players, a lot of this stuff. So then you get rid of the small businesses. So all those little family-owned businesses where you grew up in a bodega, let's say, you learn how to give cash, you learn how to stock shelves, you learn how to bring in product. You take away that knowledge. So what he's done is he's emptied all of this out. So now you work at McDonald's and you hit the Big Mac button and it tells you $3 back and you got no education. So it's almost like he's pre-planned this whole sort of slave mentality. It's really hard. I say if people are into Black Lives Matter, ask for art and music in schools. Easy, and it's good. And they'll tell you it costs too much money. Where I live, when Cuomo the Elder got into power, that's the Cuomo that's in there now, his father.
Right.
Upstate New York was becoming devastated. It was like a rust belt. How do you rebuild upstate New York? Well, look around my neighborhood. How do you rebuild upstate New York? Thinking of our neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, you do the same thing, but I'm not sure.
You build prisons.
Oh, that's what they've done. I think, that's what they've done.
That's what they've done.
Whole cities thrive on the prison system.
Of course.
So these people in upstate who've never seen a Black or Latino person are introduced to them in cuffs.
Yeah.
And that's wild, disrespectful.
And it's wild, disrespectful. And also what happens is they brought in Pressure Point. Look, the drugs did not come from the Lower East Side. The guys that sell the drugs from the Lower East Side didn't go to Colombia. So there's a lot of little machinations in between. Turns out the government was involved, the Nicaragua, the Iran-Contra, drugs turned up, cocaine's on the Lower East Side. You're cool enough now, and you've been around the city enough and out of the Lower East Side long enough. You know lots of, let's say, good-looking white people that do drugs, right?
Yeah.
And so you go to parties, and some guy's there, he's selling them. Those guys never go to jail. You go to our neighborhood, and they get years. And so they brought in things like with crack, you get an automatic, let's say, 20-year sentence. So now I used to tell these guys, look, if you have to sell drugs, I'm not into it. I don't think you should. But if you got to, go to the coolest club in the neighborhood. If you know Paris Hilton's there, those kind of people, the cops aren't going to bust it. When Paris Hilton and the rest of them leave, you leave because it's going to get busted. And so I would tell them, otherwise, if you stay on the corner, you're going to be a pork chop for some guy upstate for 20 years.
And they were handing out some hefty, prison terms. There's guys who were locked up for selling weed back in the 90s who are still in there probably.
Yeah, there's actually people that when Cuomo the Elder got into power, there's still some people on coke and things in jail from when he was in power. It's a criminal system, but the criminals are, it's like you got to really question that stuff. So bring back art and music. And
also with art and music, you get a real sense of who you are as an individual. Like, I think that should always be nurtured and cared for, as opposed to like, well, you want to make it in here, you work hard, doing some, working for a specific company.
Selling enough hamburgers.
Right. It's like, they should really nurture people becoming one with themselves in a creative way. And if they want to fall back on something a little more structured, so be it. But we should have those options for sure.
So I'm going to ask you a Lower East Side art question. It's sort of a trick question.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Okay, here we go.
Make me look silly on my own show.
No, never that. Make you proud.
Okay.
So I'm going to make you proud. Tell me some art that's around here right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if any art.
How about this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is art.
That's right. And where did this come from?
Shout out to my stepson, Tony Tirado. He designed this, and I give him a shout out quite often on here. He actually created his own comic book, too.
Really?
Yeah, so he's super talented. Yeah, but he's not from the Lower East Side. As far as like creatives coming out of the Lower East Side, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure.
Well, we got Marty, of course.
Martin. I used to go to school with him.
There you go.
Right? Did you?
But
yeah.
I just wanted to give a shout out to your stepson here.
Yeah.
Because this is how art works. And all of a sudden you take his art and you make it your background. That background becomes your symbol. So now let's get back to the homeless in the park. So this is third term of Koch. What they were doing was, you see, if you go back to the old movies in the 40s and the 50s, You used to have all these people living in like hotels and motels. You'd see the guy outside the flashing sign. The guy be sitting in there with his, Mickey of rum or something, a single room occupancy hotel, that kind of thing. It was a whole lifestyle. New York had a lot of those. So Koch emptied out a lot of those and a lot of low-income houses and turned them into co-ops and condos. And then we got all these people on the streets. And that's where you got the squeegee guys and all of that. And everybody would think, well, it's mostly just a bunch of minority people that don't want to work. It was a lot of people that had jobs where they could survive in low-income, Skid Row hotels, some of them, whatever. But it worked. It was you had your own room, hot plate, your little fridge. It was good. You were living your own life. And they just swept a lot of those out, brought in co-ops and condos. And so I was one of the radicals on the Lower East Side. I did the police riot tape, got sent to jail. That's another whole story. If you watch Captured, Dan Levin, Ben Solomon, you can watch all this story for free. So we got the homeless people to come to Tompkins Square Park and set up tents because the Lower East Side could accommodate sort of people in trouble because it was like a struggling neighborhood. It's the history of the place. So it wasn't that it was good for the neighborhood, but it was good for the message. Because there were people went out worldwide about, because everybody's thinking America, streets paved with gold, and we were showing that there was another side to America because the streets were just filled with homeless people. I mean, they just taken like Upper West Side. That's how they made all those neighborhoods sexy. Parts of the Lower East Side, they just emptied them out. They just dumped the people on the street. And so, and a lot of those, so the small jobs are gone. The guy that sits at the front, the desk guy, he's gone. The people that cleaned up the hotel, they're gone. A lot of jobs got lost, too.
Wow.
And so, like if you look at a place like Chinatown, and you used to watch in the morning, people used to come and unload the trucks and everything. Mm-hmm. That's where a lot of those kind of jobs are what a lot of those people did. Wow. So there were all these industries that they eventually got rid of. And it's only bringing it in for the wealthy. And what made America great was the ground up. It was the people coming here struggling, immigrants. That's where the new juice came. Yeah, come on, Donald Trump's kids, what are they going to do? Come on, they look like loafers to me. I don't know. I'm not saying if you're a Trump fan, I'm not saying, not being political here. But I'm saying they just don't have the drive that like a new immigrant has. Champion Pizza, the pizza guy downtown, mm-hmm. I think he's from Iran or something. He slept in Tompkins Square Park for a while. Wow. And then he learned how to make pizza. And he just worked really, really hard. And eventually he got one place and another place. And he started that whole dollar pizza thing. That's another immigrant.
Which, by the way, I got to say, I don't mind dollar pizza. I'm a native Lower East Sider. People are big pizza snobs. I'm not. I mean, it's cheese and bread. It's all good. At 2 o'clock in the morning, that dollar pizza from Champion, it's fine with me.
Well, Champion's better than most.
Right.
Champion's better than most.
How long were those tents set up in Tompkins? How long?
That came until, so Koch left, Dinkins came in probably about 1992, about like that. So they were there probably for at least 2-3 years. They tore down the band shell because people were sleeping on it. The band shell was the entertainment center. They did everything they could to destroy the culture of the people that were there. You don't really get the conga
at this time, you had lots of interesting artists, man. Just overflowing.
Yeah, New York was a culture center of the world. Absolutely.
Painters, all sorts of artists.
And so there's very few.
Big punk rock scene.
Oh, big punk rock scene. Yeah, there were just all kinds of scenes, And one scene I'm going to mention right now, which Sergio's part of, and it's another Lower East Side now becoming establishment institution. That's Overthrow Boxing.
Absolutely.
Number 9 Bleecker Street. And number 9 Bleecker Street, they kept it the same. So the difference between Overthrow Boxing, let's say, than one of these big gyms, Rumble or whatever, is everything in there has the authenticity of the old building and establishment. The Yippies used to be in there since like the 60s. So you still see part of the sign, Yipster Times. You see a lot of the newspapers and things on the wall. So it's not as razzmatazz as those news places, but if you want real New York culture and the vibe.
I agree. I mean,
it really does maintain the integrity of like old New York. You got a picture of Abby Hoffman.
Yes.
You have all sorts of newspaper clips from you know,
You can picture me on the wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you give classes there.
Yeah, I do a lot of training there, and and all the trainers are either ex-amateurs or pros still fighting, which is really cool. But it still kind of maintains the modern day age of fitness mixed with boxing, right? So it's not like an old school boxing gym where it's a fighter's gym, although fighters come out of there, but it's more set up for fitness is the priority, but it's also like an experience of like old New York, capturing that essence.
They have the first plant-based free fridge outside of Overthrow.
Yeah, and that was organized by Power Malu, who I've had him on the show, and he's a Lower East Side installation doing all. 100%. He's very proactive, very progressive,
and I think you're that guy that was doing the wheel where you kind of hunch your back up and you're back up, and then you go down with the wheel.
Oh yeah, the ab roller.
What's it called?
It's called the ab roller.
I can see why.
yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah, you can do that, right?
Yeah, I've done that. I can still do it, which is nice. At 41 years of age, I can still do it. But you gotta keep doing it, because if not, then your back starts to wonder, like, what the hell are you trying to do there, sir?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And it shows you that you can do a lot of those kind of exercises and skip roping and things like that, which will really get your body fit. And you don't need all of those really specialized sports equipment places where you think you have to have this special treatment and that special piece of equipment. It's not really true.
Yeah, one thing I like about Overthrow is I've always felt very proud being part of that family, because they, it could be just a gym that someone walks into, but it's not. It offers all sorts of events that, assist with promoting the goodness in the neighborhood, and whether it's a protest run for George Floyd, whether it's the plant-based fridge. It's always intertwined with something for the people.
Like they have the Bridge Runners Clubs.
Exactly.
And like Power says, nobody left behind. So you don't have, what happens, I used to document a lot of protests. And one of the problems with protests is that they're exciting. So a lot of times when you're at the front, the fittest people are at the front, and the action gets going and the adrenaline gets going. So everybody starts to speed up. And then the people that are part of the protest, maybe the mothers and kids, and they get left behind. And so Power's always got the consciousness that nobody gets left behind. And the club is called the Bridge Runners Club. Him and Mike Say started that club. It's now worldwide. I remember they had one thing there. I went over there and Overthrow and showed Captured. And they had people there from Brazil, people from Italy, people from all over the world.
It's awesome.
And the other thing about Overthrow is they always have champion women boxers. They have like 3 world champion women boxers.
Veronica Jeffrey, Alicia Napoleon, Melissa Saintville.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think they have the first Haitian woman.
Yeah, that's Melissa Saintville.
Yeah. So if you want to know who the first Haitian American champion boxer is, come to Overthrow Boxing.
She was also on American Ninja Warrior.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, be careful.
Exactly. Kick your ass.
Kick ass, baby.
And then jump up a building and you'll never see her again.
Yes, ninja style.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the Allen Boys were that was a big crew downtown from around Allen Street. They used to sell drugs and things like that. They were kind of part of that whole early '80s thing where Cuomo picked up and like that.
And that was interesting about the Lower East Side, that you didn't have so much as what we have now, like prison gangs. They're more like block gangs. Or cliques, right?
Yeah,
so you had like the Allen Boys, you had the Lansing Street Boys, you had Smith Boys. So it was like a lot of neighborhood cliques.
And graffiti crews. 501s, you know.
And in front of your studio, you've captured a lot of those guys passing through. They used to love taking pictures.
Of course. So
it's so awesome.
Yeah, back to the Allen Street Boys. They were somehow supporters before they all got busted and like that of the Ninja movie.
What do you mean the Ninja movie?
The original Ninja movie. They had some sort of rights to that.
Oh, really? How so?
I did a radio show, actually, a radio show on the Allen Boys, and they talked about David Godless. He was one of the Allen Boys, and they had I don't know if they sponsored or paid for the original.
That's very interesting.
Ninja movie. It is interesting, and a lot of those crews and posses. You see, by photographing the front door, a lot of the people I had were the youth. So some of them went from grade 1 across the street, like Roberto Cruz, still around. Now he's One-Eyed Bert. You know, a number of people. Some of those people have grandkids now. So I have some of them from grade 1, and then Bert, like a lot of over the years, you know, junior high school, you know, up until high school, now working. So it's like a whole cross. But also, you used to get the crews and the posses. You see, Lower East Side, the last street gang, which I've also documented a lot of, was the Satan Sinner Nomads. And that was like started by a guy called Coach Sheese. He did 24 years altogether. His last bit was 18. They're also in captured. And they were the last street gang to wear colors. So they were mostly Puerto Rican. And so...
This is early on, like in the 80s, though, right?
80s, yes, because in 92 he went to jail.
Okay.
But I got him into art, and so he kept up his art in prison. And then when he got out, we did a book together called Street Gangs: History of the Lower East Side.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a copy of that at Overthrow.
Yes. Now that book got him off a lifetime parole, because all of a sudden it showed that he was like a functional member of society, he was doing constructive things, and it's the only history of street gangs from the Lower East Side. Because like a lot of the street gangs at the Cato Nunchuckles turned into drug gangs, posses, crews. So like Third and C would be Cato's boys, but they would be selling coke instead of like rumbling for territory. And then they had like the World there, so they'd be, and they made a lot of money down.
Oh, wow, the World. That was the after hours on 2nd Street and Avenue B. I grew up on 3rd Street between A and B. And
did you?
Yeah. So that place, man, was bumping to like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Do you remember that place?
Yes, I remember that place.
That place was famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the World.
Yeah, a couple of bad things happened there towards the end. I think that's why they had to shut down.
Yeah, well, the kids used to go in there, you know, a couple of Cato's boys, and would sort of rob the people for their gold chains and stuff like that. And I remember Susan, the girl that worked up front, she got shot through the leg. Yeah, it kind of got a little bit too out of hand. But, so I have a lot of that history. MK, I went to court with him. MK became one of the head people in the Bloods in the prison system. I knew him when he was at court, him and Peachy. And so they had to go to court. They couldn't go with their mother, and they'd go into family court. So I went with them as like the older guy. So we went into court, and this bitch of a judge said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, a neighbor, a friend." It was Judge Judy.
No way.
Yeah, what a bitch.
Now she got her own show.
Yeah,
she got her own book. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's rain.
That's right.
Wow.
So then MK went on, and he's like dominant now in the Bloods. And I picture they were like taking their lighters and going up above in the courthouse with putting their names in with the black soot. So that was interesting. But it was all, you know, when you got your front door picture, it was always with love and respect. So I got a lot of people. So not all of them were, you know, some of them were bad boys, obviously. But it was always love and respect. So never had a problem. They were always very happy to have their picture in the window, because they used to had a picture with 32 pictures. And then what happened is that I would change them, and then they would come back. I photograph guys now, like one of those guys over from like by Allen Street. He's in the front door book, and I got him holding up the front door picture. He also did like 18 years, and he got out, and there's him young and him now.
So
like
cool.
Years later. So that's the history of the neighborhood, with just I probably have 10,000 people. Most of them are Hispanic. The vast, vast majority.
A lot of Dominicans, a lot of Puerto Ricans.
A lot of Dominicans, a lot of Puerto Ricans. You know, I got when the Dominicans started really showing up in the early 90s, because prior to that, it'd been mostly Puerto Rican. And then the Bodegas were all switching over. Started getting all the Dominican Bodegas. And then down where I am, in that section, like Marco, when you first meet him, you think he's Puerto Rican or something, but he's Dominican. They were one of the first Dominican families. He used to sell with Hellraiser. Mm-hmm. And so, you know... and then it just sort of multiplied. Now there's a lot of them. So there's this whole sort of cultural change. And what a blessing, you know. Because the other thing is when you meet those people as real people, especially when you know them from kids. You know, I'll see Marco now. Yo, what's up? What's up? You know.
A lot of them had tailor shops too.
Tailor
Right,
shop.
they were big, and a lot of Dominicans had their tailor shops. You'll be lucky if you find one now.
Not too many. There's
Not too
guy
many.
on Allen Street. I think there's still one in Rivington. But the other guy's still on Stanton Street.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I was actually on the last Bourdain show. And the Bourdain show came out of the Lower East Side. That was the Parts Unknown. That was his last show. Then, unfortunately, he died. But I hooked him up with a bunch of people from the Lower East Side. So he understood that I knew a lot about the Lower East Side, and I documented a lot of it, and I have a heroin bag collection. So he came down to find this bag toilet, which I had.
Holy shit.
So he's the guy that called me the godfather of documentary at the Lower East Side. So I did a graphic novel. You can actually look it up. Julian Veloch. I have an Esty account. Clayton LES, I think it is. It's Esty. You can go there and buy the books, and I make the caps and stuff like that. And so, you know, I say I've lived the American dream, and I really believe I have. I come here from Western Canada, immigrant. You know, we were like early on, we got stopped at the border a couple of times and got sent back and had to sneak across the border. I mean, I'm familiar with all that kind of stuff. And everybody thinks the American dream is like, you know, having a penthouse in a Plaza Hotel and, you know, all the Cadillac outside. For me, it's having a life that was an adventure. And I'll tell you, for me, my life on the Lower East Side, believe it, was an adventure.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
The people I met, the things that I went through, you know, the front door, watching those people grow up, watching them go to jail, seeing them come back.
Some of them no longer with us.
Oh, there's more, yeah, there's definitely, that's definitely a category. And to have that kind of love and respect is rich. And that, for me, is the American dream. And I really feel that I love, you know, live the American dream. For Bloomberg, it might have becoming mayor. For me, it was being the godfather of documentary at the Lower East Side.
I love it, man.
I mean, come on. Lower East Side gets in your blood,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
For sure.
And, you know, the thing that really amazes me about the Lower East Side, see, here's another thing I talk to people about. Once again, it's a black thing. Most of the drugs in Harlem are sold to black people. Because, you know, a lot of white people were afraid to go to Harlem and buy drugs. Lower East Side was just accessible by the bridges, the tunnels, Canal Street, Delancey Street. Everybody went through there. Every culture. You had immigrants, you had blacks, whites, Hispanics, everybody. So really, American Gangster and all those big drug movies are really a smaller drug market than the Lower East Side was. The Lower East Side was huge. And you had Wall Street, you had Soho Art, you had Tribeca, you had just everybody could get to the Lower East Side and buy drugs. And then you had places like CBGBs that were accessible to everybody. So nobody's really done a movie or anything on the drug culture of the Lower East Side. And I guarantee you it was way bigger than Bumpy Johnson and way bigger than American Gangster. Guaranteed. I mean, think about it. Come on.
That makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Where's our props? Come on, Hollywood. We're waiting for you.
Wow. When you said that you collected bags of heroin,
Yeah.
I remember as a kid hearing like the new heroin that hit the streets. It was like DMW, Dead Man Walking.
Yes.
And you know, and fiends were just out to get that because that was the one. And then I guess they couldn't keep up with the demand, so they started cutting with different things, and there was a lot of people died. See, people don't know that heroin by itself, I don't encourage anyone to do heroin, but heroin alone, you can live. It's when you start cutting that shit that it gets real dangerous. When you mix it with alcohol, I mean, a lot of people say that. There's this drug expert by the name of Dr. Carl Hart, and he talks about that. Like, if you do heroin, you know,
But
responsibly.
You got to build up to it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, you know, that's because your body has to sort of get used to it. The problem is, for all those people that buy heroin on the street heroin,
You have no idea what you're getting.
Yes, I want you to look at that guy and think of your local pharmacist because he's making what you're shooting in your body. And they mix it up with baby powder. They mix it up with fentanyl. Fentanyl's a big one.
Right.
And fentanyl will kill a lot of people.
Right. It's the concoction of everything that really gets people.
So the chemist,
So
chemistry
with
looking at is the guy that's selling
with
to
Dr.
you.
Carl Hart and the last episode I was talking about, I just started the book and now I'm in the middle. So each episode I talk a little more about. It's interesting because if the fact of the matter, people are gonna do drugs regardless. The war on drugs was a complete failure. People are gonna do drugs. So with that, maybe there's a support or access, right, to places where you could test your drugs and see what the purity is, so you don't kill yourself. Because what's attached to it is like, oh, you do drugs, you die, and the people that we see do drugs are the ones that are really strung out in the streets. The fact of the matter is, it's a lot of motherfuckers who do drugs, and they're somewhat functional.
And the other thing is that the war on drugs has been unsuccessful for certain people. I mean, the majority of people in jail are in there because of drugs in one way or another. A lot of people the drug thing there's so many illegal businesses that just fester off of drugs. You're right. There should be a rational way, because it's a fact of life. It's just a fact of life. People are going to do drugs. There's nothing you can do about it. And a lot of times these pharmaceuticals are worse because they're like, God, you see these people on Oxycontin and that, and they're harder to get off and whatever. But we want a history of the drugs from the Lower East Side. We want our own Hollywood movie.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It'd be awesome. And so your life is still Lower East Side based. You work in the gym. The gym's Lower East Side. Well, it's number 9 Bleecker just off of the Bowery.
Yeah, I even even my stand-up is very, very New York. So, you have yet to see a show, but if you ever came, you'd be like, yeah, I could tell this guy's from New York,
Really?
So I take that with me everywhere I go.
You just comedy?
Yeah, I've been doing it for over 10 years.
Do you have something to watch?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
I'll tell you what. I'm starting to come back with the caps, and I'm working with this guy, Teddy. And Teddy's also working with a guy who's trying to produce comedy people. Like for a show, having comedians. I'll send him an email with your thing in it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be hosting a show tonight for a friend of mine, Derek Drescher, who actually works for Combody, who's Cas Marte, who, you know his story?
Of course.
Yeah, Cas. So Cas has Combody. He was an ex-drug kingpin, and in prison, he created this prison-style workout, got a grant, opened up his own spot, and from there I met Derek, and Derek is a comic. He's also an instructor at Combody, and I'll be hosting his show tonight, and that'll be fun. It's a little birthday show.
Yeah. Cas from Combody, Marte.
Did you know him as a kid?
I got a picture of him and his brother as kids.
His brother is a politician. He just ran and won, I believe, for council or something. Yeah, city council.
Yes, he's in District 1. So he's taller than Cas.
If you ask me what the responsibility of a city council is, I'll draw a blank. Broken light bulbs will pop above my head? Question marks.
Well, we're going to change that now that he's in there.
What's the responsibility of a city council?
We're going to start finding out what we need from the neighborhood, and we're going to go over and start bothering him because he's from the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But I got pictures of them when they were kids. They're probably 12 years old or something. And Cas now runs a gym, Combody, and his brother Christopher Marte is our city council member, and their father is a playwright. He writes plays and things. A Dominican guy. They're all Dominican. And Cas had gone to jail for he was dealing coke on the street. So in jail he started. See, this is what we're talking about. Back to Overthrow boxing. It's the basics that count, not the sexy equipment. So he started this whole system of prison. Sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups. That's it.
Yeah, calisthenics, bodyweight exercises.
Body-aware exercises. And he's turned it into a real thriving business. He's had lots of press, everything else. So he's taken a disadvantage. You see, that's the message out there, kids. For all you boys and girls that are listening, under 70, I'm over 70, so I'm not listening anymore. But but the thing of it is, it's that, you can take a disadvantage and make it into an advantage. Those women boxing champions, they turned that into an advantage. Boxing, inner city, tough life, Haiti. For me, it was coming out bad into the working class. Art got me here, changed my life. So it's taking your disadvantage. And for Cas, it was being in jail. And he was like way overweight, really in bad shape, getting bad health. And he lost like 70 pounds, sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups. And that's all it is in the end, is moving your muscles. I mean, some of those exercises, I look at it weird, and I would never try it. The one you do with that wheel that goes up and down,
right.
That's like a killer.
But I love the success stories, and I promote that.
Me too, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you can be, and like I say, for me, I live the American dream. And the American dream for me is the adventure that I lived. I met people that are like really, out there, dangerous gangsters, artists, good guys, bad guys. Watched Chris Marte come up from a little kid. Now he's our city council member. I mean, that's a rich life. And in the end, we live and we die. So it's the richness of your life that counts. Yeah. Created the Clayton cap. We were, GQ called us one of the two best baseball cap makers in America. We changed the history of the baseball cap. We were the first people to go off of the front. When we started the baseball cap in 1986, it was like Yankees. And so it was rednecks and sports people.
Okay.
And then so we started doing with Elsa, my wife. We've been together like 50 years. She's in somewhere else right now, but whatever. But I love Elsa, but So anyway, we started doing embroidery going all the way around the cap and like that. Nobody did that, and we were able to lead that market for 10 years. Because, you see, when Koch came into power in the early 80s, the garment industry was number one. And when you were a kid, you remember going up to Midtown and those guys pushing racks of clothing.
Yeah, right there in Hell's Kitchen.
Yes. All that's gone. And by
a
the
lot
time
of that stuff is gone.
It's emptied out. They started calling them sweatshops and that, and they closed them down. And then they moved it all to, eventually it got to China. It started off with like the Dominican Republic, Mexico, Hong Kong. And then eventually it took China about 20 years. They had to have the poison sheetrock. I mean, they had a lot of experimentation, but they're like the king now. And so we bought all this machinery from going out of bankruptcy sales and things. Because Broadway, when you go down Broadway, it used to be like cap manufacturers. Mm-hmm. New York was a manufacturing city. It's not anymore. So we were able to sort of dominate that market. And we made also custom caps. So you'd come in, let's say Matt Dillon, the movie star. He made a number of movies. So he'd come in. He used to hang out downtown. And I'd say, what's the movie? So he would say, okay, let's say I was in a shoot-'em-up show. So, you might have a bank robber in the front, just different images around because Elsa was good at sewing and making the caps. Look up Clayton LES. There's a thing there, I think it's Clayton LES, where you can see a lot of the old caps and things. And we made a lot of custom caps. Did a jacket back for Mick Jagger when he went on tour. And so we're getting back into making the caps.
Very cool.
Yeah, so, it's still possible to be an independent in New York, and that's the game. Be an independent. This is an independent show.
Right.
Support this show. This is an independent show.
No, absolutely. And we're living in a special time right now where you could create and, with all the different platforms and sell your own product, and there's just so much room to do that, which makes it really exciting, to do. What do you feel about the Lower East Side present day?
Two things. One thing I just want to say, COVID has its downside. We all know it. It also has its upside. It's going to take at least a year for all those big companies to get back into gear. The people are going to have to come back from Connecticut. They're going to have to get used to
Right.
working in the city. A lot of them don't want to come back to work. So it's going to take. So if you're on the ground running right now, making your own stuff, you got an advantage because the big boys can't compete with you. But the gentrification has really killed off a lot of the Lower East Side. So it's really up to us. I'm interested in the history now of the Lower East Side, saving that history. I've done a number of books, the street gangs of the Lower East Side captured. There's a site called NoArt, N-O exclamation mark A-R-T. N-O exclamation mark A-R-T. And you can go there, you can see books I've made, stuff like that. And I'm the wrong guy to be making books, believe me. Bad end of the working class, that whole thing. But the thing of it is, if you want to do something, you can. And the possibilities are still here. And like Sergio's got his own radio show. Beautiful environment up here. He got his stepson to make the big banner.
Looks good in here, right? I always like to show off these beautiful oak. Well, I'm not sure if it's oak, but these beautiful wood floors.
Yes.
These are nice.
It's a beautiful location. I mean, the building's really beautiful. You got me in here taking pictures, remembering the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing I'm trying to do is to save my archive. So I have a video archive with more than a couple thousand hours. I have to get that digitized. That's very expensive. And I have to get my photographs digitized as well, the negatives. So I'm working on that. I'm trying to save my archive.
So you have in your studio, you just have thousands of physical hard copy photos and negatives.
Yeah,
thousands.
Yeah, I have, and I'm not that organized. Elsa was the organized one. She was kind of like I was like the adventure chaos, and she was like the organizer, bodyguard, or whatever, life support. So yeah, it's saving that history, and it's up to us. If we don't save our own history, who will? You know what I mean? We all know about the Kennedys, but we don't know about us. And it's the us that we got to save. Kennedys are going to do all right without us. Or the Giulianis or the Bloombergs or the whatever. But we're the ones that has to. It's really the meat of the system. You know what I mean?
You mentioned Giuliani. What a character. Every time I see him, it's almost like a caricature of what he was always a dirtbag, but now it's like a caricature of what he once was. It's like they continue to allow him to speak, and he's just odd right now.
Oh, do you remember there used to be a drummer in Midtown? Maybe you're too young for this, but he used to have his hair like shoe polish black. And then sometimes, I'm sure you remember this. Sometimes in the market or something.
I've seen a bunch of people like that.
Yeah, right.
You
see them in the market. Cheap hair dye, and when it gets really hot and they're sweating,
it just starts dripping.
So here's Giuliani, the president's lawyer, on TV, looking like he's out of his mind, and all this black stuff is dripping down his face. I don't know. Who does he pick as his police commissioner? Carrick. Who's Carrick? Carrick, the guy that went to jail. It's like everybody around them are criminals. You want to know something else that's interesting, and I want you to think about this. Mm-hmm. Everybody credits Giuliani for cleaning up the mafia. I say it's not true, and here's why. And you know where John Gotti's club was because it was over there on Mott Street. You went by there for sure, Mulberry. There was that little...
Yeah, right, yeah, absolutely.
You know where that was,
yeah.
Yes.
Right in the middle of like right there on Mott Street, close to Chinatown. Yeah, they had their social club there.
Their social club, yes. And so all Giuliani did was clean the streets. Not saying Gotti wasn't a tough guy, not saying he wasn't a gangster. All those things are true. But Paul Castellano, the guy that he killed, where was his money going up to? So you get rid of Giuliani, or you get rid of John Gotti, you've just cleaned up that street and now made it possible to turn it into a shoe store or whatever. So it's just part of gentrification. That process was in motion anyway. It was coming in with the bars, it was coming in with the international corporate businesses, which Bloomberg, but so it was just cleaning up the street guys. But what about the guys above that? He didn't touch them.
Absolutely. He didn't touch
He stopped it at the bottom.
He stopped at the bottom,
yes.
and got a lot of praise for it, and it's bullshit. But he didn't change the system. The system was worse. The cops had way too much power. They were just stopping and frisking anybody who walked by. A lot of people, they had this quota they had to meet. That's right. X amount of arrests a week. Or a month, and there was a lot of people getting pinched for petty crimes, but there was no system in order to repair what was really going on internally.
Like where was Castellano's money going to? Senators, maybe the president, maybe the Iran war, because that's where the millions of dollars was going. Because all those street guys were funneling it to him. So the 5 families, let's say, are funneling it to him. Where'd his money go? He wasn't the bank. He was just part of the process. He made more money than the other ones, but he was only part of the process. So where was that money going? Okay, now we got rid of John Gotti. Okay, but that didn't change the system. And so, that was the one thing with the Godfather movie is that you realize with the Godfather movie, it starts off in the bottom where the story starts off. It starts off with the Gotti part, let's say. The guys shooting each other on the street, all that sort of thing. But if you follow the story as it goes on, all of a sudden it's the senators, it's the president. All of a sudden now you realize it's where the real mafia is. And Giuliani didn't go near any of that. Closest he got to that was Trump.
Exactly. Is it true that Curtis Slewa, the one of the Guardian Angels, the Guardian Angels leader,
Yeah.
he was he's a character. Is he running for mayor?
He is running for mayor.
Yeah.
You know, he got shot in Lower East Side. He used to live for a while on Avenue A and 8th Street. And then he was talking all this gaudy stuff at that time, which was dangerous. You know, I mean,
That was
Gotti
super
a real
dangerous,
guy,
and it was
yeah.
like the people or the mob that shot him up.
I mean, make no mistake, Gotti was a dangerous guy. You know, no disrespect to Gotti or his clan or any of that. I'm just saying that was the street level thing. But he was making all these comments about it, and then so he used to get his coffee in the morning at Ray's, the newspaper and the coffee. Remember
Ray's, yeah, Ray's is still there.
Ray's Candy Store, absolutely.
You know, during COVID, Ray's was open, the only shop open. You know, like
right.
they are resilient.
They are
The
resilient.
diner Odessa's closed down, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right. Ray, you know, you're absolutely right, because Ray did say open, right?
Yeah, I mean, every time I passed through there,
That'd
was
be
just
window service.
Yeah,
But
they never
closed.
that place is open 24/7,
Yeah, you're right.
365.
That's right. That's a real institution. But so the Curtis, this cab stop picked him up, and then they went the wrong way down 7th Street. He knew he was in trouble, and the guy turned around and started shooting him. So then he shot him, you know. He talks about this later on. He got shot.
Yeah, that's how I heard about it. He did an interview, and he talked about how he went in the cab, and the guy driving the cab was actually a hitman.
Yeah.
And I think it happened in broad daylight.
Yeah, well, it's like 7, 8 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And it ended up with him getting shot in the, you know, like he couldn't urinate. He had to get a bag after that and all that. And he talks about that now, how he, you know, has to wear the bag and all of that. I mean, it's a brave thing for him to talk about, you know, so no disrespect for him. But, yeah, he actually got shot, and then he jumped out the window and escaped. And he's lucky to have escaped. And those guys, I mean, they must be just bad shots, but they turned around and bang, 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 and they shot him. And to survive that and to come back and still, you know, have the big mouth, you know, the guy's got balls. Do I want him as mayor? That's a different story. But I got to respect his
tenacity, right?
Absolutely. You know, he definitely get my respect for being, you know, you want a tough guy, he's it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You know, it's interesting. Every time I hear of someone getting shot, that's a terrifying thing. And you hear like in present day, you know, New York, like shooters are going up or whatever. I recently had a guest on last week, a friend of mine, and in 2005 he was shot 5 times. He lives, and the shooter did 15 years.
Where was he shot?
In Avenue D.
Avenue D.
Yeah, and I had them both on the podcast.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's an interesting story, you know.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I think I had.
So what was that story called? You could go. Are your shows on YouTube?
Yes.
So you could go back and watch that episode.
Yeah, it hasn't come out yet. So you're actually going to come out before them, you know. So it'll be interesting to talk about it now. In another week or so, I'll have that story.
Tell me that when that comes on.
Yeah, and you know, I was careful with not, you know, I didn't want to exploit their experiences. I wanted to share because I thought it was, you know, I wanted to commend both men for being able to put their difference aside prior to the coming on the show, and then being able to share their story, where were they at individually in their lives. I didn't really want to talk about how you know the shooting transpired because it's, you know, it's behind them. Exactly. I think that could be, you know, that could be dangerous. They met? What was that?
Was it the first time they met?
No, actually, what the guy who spent time in jail, he came out. He had 3 years or so outside of prison, and the one who shot Ariel, they met. He bumped into him, and they bumped into them. Yeah, well, I think it was a conscious effort to meet him and tell him, "Listen, are we good?" You know, because I'm good if you're good. And
well, who's asking who's good? The guy that got shot or the guy that shot him?
The one who got shot went up to, it was like, listen,
really?
I forgive. You know, where are we at? Because I guess he wants to just make, you know, just have a clear conscience about it.
That's a brave thing.
Yeah, and but I had them both on the show, and I think it's important to share a story of forgiveness and redemption, you know, and moving the fuck on with your life on both parts. They don't have to be friends, obviously, but sharing that I think could be
inspiring.
deal.
It's a big deal because what happens is I think young kids who behave that way, they're angry, they don't think it's, they don't realize how many people are affected with violence acts like that. Like you could spend tremendous amount of time in jail, kill life. You could take a life, but beyond that, you affect your family, your kids. I mean, it is such a toll and such a tragedy.
And then you're a young guy like that. Then you go to jail. You join a gang. You get involved in something else.
Yeah, and it's just a cycle,
crime.
the same bullshit.
Yeah, you never get out of jail because you just keep on piling up tickets.
Right.
But if you look at, Mickey the Pope used to be one of the major pot dealers in New York City, really. But he was Lower East Side. And he eventually got to 1-800-want-pot, but that's how he eventually got busted.
So he like an Uber service for pot?
Yeah. He was like the first guy who really started that whole concept.
Innovative.
But in the early 80s, he got shot 5 times by the hitmen. He was a big guy, and they were trying to extort him, and he wouldn't go for it. So the guy shot him 5 times. Anyway, the guy that shot him was a young guy. He came from this crew called the Hitmen, and so. After years later, I knew both of them, obviously. So I tried to get the guy to go visit him because he was dying, visit him before he died, but he wouldn't do it. And I thought, being a good Catholic boy, you shot him 5 times, a little redemption would be a good thing. But he didn't think so.
He didn't go for it.
And with these 2 guys, how badly damaged was the guy that was shot?
He was in jail for quite some time. I mean,
I mean the guy that was shot.
Yeah, he was in. I'm sorry, he was in the hospital for quite some time.
Really?
His stomach was opened up.
Stomach.
He could still walk. Yeah, but punctured lung.
Oh my
God. It was close range, 5 shots.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this a wild story. It's another interesting story, and we'll wrap this up. I want to know what you know about. But remember, Father Pat.
Oh, 5th largest bank robbery in American history.
I mean, that's such an interesting story because I have friends who were part of the group home that he had.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of my friends.
Which ones?
I knew Ted. I knew my friend Mike lived there for a couple of years.
Ted, the Asian kid.
Yes.
Oh, you know Ted?
Yeah.
Oh, I know that story really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wild story, Father Pat was another Lower East Side installation.
Absolutely, from the 50s.
Yeah, and he...
Anita's house, 609 East 9th Street.
Yeah, and so every meeting with him was always was pleasant. My friend John Mayer used to have his antique shop downstairs.
I met him too.
Yeah.
I used to hang out with because there was another guy I was documenting it, Baba Raul Canizares, and he was the Santeria guy, and so he lived there for a while as well. I'm working with John Strausbaugh on another book, Characters of the Lower East Side. And one of them is Father Pat.
I mean, Father Pat is his story.
Father Pat.
So so he took people in. He fed them. They had their own rooms.
A lot
in
of
this
kids
tenement.
that were juvenile delinquent types would go there, and because Father Pat would accept them. So he had a lot of sort of kids that were. See, you grew up in Lower East Side, so you know what I'm talking about. A lot of those guys you meet that are sort of like socially seen as really bad people. A lot of them are really good guys who just got sort of like into situations where other people shouldn't be in, right? I mean, you know a lot of guys. Mm-hmm. And so Father Pat would take a lot of them in, and they weren't really bad people. They just need a little love and attention, place to stay, and like that. So, but yeah, he got caught counting the money. So they
years later, like in the mid '90s, it was said that he allegedly was part of like a armor. What was it? Armored truck.
It was a Brinks robbery.
A Brinks robbery,
yes, in Rochester.
Wow.
And they were saying, and it was $7.5 million. You want to talk about John Gotti? You want to talk about Father Pat, this little Irish guy? $7.5 million was a big robbery.
Yeah, and they never found the money.
They found $2.5 million that they were counting, but the other $5 million or $5.5 or whatever disappeared. They thought it was probably for the IRA. And Father Pat was one of the only people who went to jail. He got like 48 months. I went up to Rochester when he got sentenced. But,
and never peeped. He was,
didn't do it.
Didn't
have
do
nothing
it.
to do with it.
Yeah.
It's
so funny when he first came home.
there was just a neighborhood guy, like heavy drinker. I don't know the guy, but he's like, man, where's Gangsta Pat at? Where's Gangsta? And John, the owner of the antique shop was like, come on, man, don't talk like that. He's like, man, I want to see Gangsta Pat. He didn't sing like a bird. He a real G, and it was so funny.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so I'm doing this book with John Strassbaugh about characters Lower East Side. Mickey the Pope is one of them. LA2 is another. Father Pat.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and
so we'll be on the lookout for that for sure.
There's so much undiscovered material on Lower East Side that it's crazy. I mean, I bet you just about all the shows you have are really interesting, and most of the people don't know who most of the people are.
Right. Now, I think, with all the characters, all the people that we mentioned today, I think we gave a nice little glimpse of the background, and, people want to do their own research, please do, man. All these stories are interesting. And I like what you said, most of the people that we're talking about are good people, working, I would say 95% good people, just working with the hand that they're dealt, and they deserve their just due. And,
that's why I say, like, for me, the American dream, I mean, being, knowing Father Pat really well, fifth largest bank robbery in American history, Mickey the Pope, the guy that started the whole pot distribution. I mean, just people that made life interesting.
Absolutely.
Some people want to know the sports stars or the Mick Jaggers or whatever. You get to say hello or whatever. I'll take the boys that I met.
For sure. Let me tell you, a lot of those pop icons that people look up to, it's inspired by the people we're talking about. People like that. That's the real deal.
That's the real deal.
Clayton, you are the man. Thank you so much for your time. And look out for Clayton Patterson, LES. But you could just Google Clayton Patterson and his books and his documentary, and all that stuff will surface. Give it a click, give it a purchase, and support if you want a real slice of real, authentic New York. That's the DBS podcast. Any last words?
One more word.
Yeah, please do.
I've got a book out. It's called The Front Door Book, Lower East Side. Try to find that book. I think it's on Amazon. It's a rare book now, but you'll find this guy when he was a young guy and had hair.
Yeah, believe it or not, had a mean hairline, straight like Steve Harvey at one time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. We out of here. Peace.
Thank you. That was great.
That was